Let's talk about something that has tripped up too many brilliant, strong, and capable women: the exhausting chase for validation. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? That feeling that your value is tied to someone else's approval, that you are only as good as the compliments you receive or the applause that follows your efforts. It's an exhausting way to live, yet so many of us have fallen into this trap. Why? Because deep down, we've been conditioned to believe that our worth is something external, something earned, something others must grant us. But here's the truth: our worth was never meant to be borrowed, it was meant to be owned. From a young age, we're taught to be pleasing, be nice, smile more, don't be too much. We learn that approval is currency, and so we shape ourselves to fit in. We shrink when we should stand tall. We silence ourselves when we should speak up. And we become masters at reading the room instead of reading our own hearts. But beloved, when we live this way, we hand over the pen of our life story to people who were never meant to write it. Seeking validation is like trying to build a house on shifting sand. No matter how beautiful it looks, it will never stand firm. The problem with chasing validation is that it's never enough. One compliment makes you feel good for a moment, but then the doubt creeps in. Was it really genuine? Do they still think that? What if I mess up next time? And so you keep performing, keep perfecting, keep pleasing, hoping to secure something that was never meant to be earned. But here's the thing: no amount of external approval can replace the deep, unshakable knowing that you are enough just as you are. Owning your worth means standing firm in who you are, whether anyone claps for you or not. It means understanding that your value is not found in your looks, your achievements, or how well you fit into someone else's expectations. It means walking into a room with your head high, not because you're waiting for someone to notice you, but because you already know who you are. A woman who owns her worth does not beg for a seat at the table. She builds her own. So how do we stop chasing validation? First, we must recognize the ways we've been seeking it. Is it in the way we over-explain ourselves, the way we change our opinions to match the crowd, the way we downplay our accomplishments so we don't seem too much? Once we see it, we can begin to shift. We can practice saying, I am enough, even when no one is watching. We can learn to validate ourselves, to be proud of the work we've done, to celebrate our own victories, and to remind ourselves that our worth is not a negotiation. Second, we must become comfortable with being misunderstood. Not everyone will see you for who you truly are, and that's okay. Some people will misinterpret your confidence as arrogance, your boundaries as selfishness, your authenticity as being too much. Let them. You are not responsible for making everyone comfortable. You are responsible for being true to yourself. The moment we stop adjusting ourselves for approval is the moment we step into real freedom. Lastly, beloved, we must surround ourselves with people who see us, not for what we do, not for how we look, but for who we truly are. The right people will never require you to shrink yourself. They will celebrate your voice, encourage your dreams, and remind you of your worth when you forget. And when you learn to see your own worth first, you'll find that the need for validation loses its power over you. Beloved, let's set the record straight. Confidence is not perfection. But how often do we confuse the two? How often do we tell ourselves, I'll be confident when I lose the weight, when I get the promotion, when I have it all together? We convince ourselves that confidence is something we'll earn once we become flawless, once there's nothing left to criticize, but that's a lie. Confidence is not about being perfect. It's about being real, being present, and showing up fully, even when things are messy. We live in a world that sells perfection as the standard. Social media feeds are filled with carefully curated images, airbrushed to remove any trace of imperfection. We see women who seem to have it all: perfect bodies, perfect careers, perfect families. And we think, if I could just get it right like she does, then I'd feel confident. But beloved, that's an illusion. Perfection is a mirage that keeps moving further away the closer you get to it. It's an impossible standard that only leads to self-doubt and exhaustion. The truth is, confidence is born in imperfection. It's built in the moments when you stumble but keep going. It's forged in the times when you speak up, even when your voice shakes. Confidence isn't about knowing you'll never fail. It's about knowing that failure doesn't define you. It's about trusting yourself enough to take the next step, even when you can't see the whole path. If you wait to be perfect before you step into your confidence, you will be waiting your whole life. Perfectionism is a thief. It steals your joy, your courage, and your ability to connect with others. When we chase perfection, we hesitate to take risks because we fear getting it wrong. We hold back our ideas because they might not be good enough. We don't apply for the job, don't launch the business, don't raise our hands because we're afraid of not being perfect. But beloved, confidence isn't about having all the answers. It's about believing you are capable of figuring things out along the way. And let's be honest, perfection is exhausting. It keeps you constantly editing yourself, constantly second guessing, constantly wondering if you measure up. But confidence is freeing. Confidence allows you to step into the room as you are without needing to prove anything to anyone. It lets you say, I don't know, but I'll learn. It lets you laugh at your mistakes instead of feeling ashamed of them. Confidence is not about being the best. It's about believing that you are enough right here, right now. So how do we untangle confidence from perfection? First, we must let go of the idea that mistakes make us unworthy. Every strong, confident woman you admire has failed many times. They didn't wait until they were perfect to show up. They showed up imperfectly and learned along the way. If you're not willing to be imperfect, you'll never step into your true confidence. Second, we must practice self-compassion. Confidence grows in an environment of kindness, not criticism. If your inner voice is constantly telling you that you're not good enough, that you need to do more, be more, achieve more, how can confidence take root? Instead, talk to yourself like you would a dear friend. Celebrate your progress. Acknowledge your efforts. Let yourself be human. Finally, beloved, remember this. Confidence is a decision. It's not something you wait for. It's something you step into. It's the moment you choose to stand tall, even when you feel small. It's the moment you say, I'm showing up anyway. It's the moment you decide that your worth is not tied to perfection, but to the courage it takes to be yourself. Because confidence is not about never falling. It's about always getting back up. Beloved, how often do you say, I'm sorry, when there's nothing to be sorry for? How many times have you shrunk yourself in a room, softened your voice, or made yourself smaller so that others could feel more comfortable? Women have been conditioned, sometimes subtly, sometimes directly, to believe that their presence should be as unintrusive as possible, that their voices should be gentle, their opinions agreeable, and their bodies should take up less space. But let me tell you something powerful. You were never meant to shrink. You were never meant to apologize for existing. From the time we are little girls, we are taught to be polite, to be accommodating, to make room for others, even when it costs us our own presence. We learn to say, sorry to bother you, before stating our needs. We apologize for asking questions. We apologize for not responding fast enough, for responding too quickly, for saying too much, for saying too little. We apologize for speaking our minds, for having emotions, for having boundaries. And after a while, we start believing that we are, in fact, a burden, that the very act of taking up space requires permission. But beloved, the truth is this: your existence is not an inconvenience. Your voice is not too loud. Your opinions are not too much. You do not need to apologize for being fully, unapologetically yourself. Somewhere along the way, we must unlearn the lie that we are only worthy when we are small, agreeable, or easy to accommodate. True belonging is never found in shrinking. It's found in showing up as your full, authentic self. Think about the women you admire. Do they apologize for taking up space, or do they walk into a room and own it with grace and confidence? Do they make themselves invisible, or do they stand firm in who they are? The women who change the world, who make an impact, who inspire others, they do not spend their lives making themselves smaller for the comfort of others. They take up space with purpose, knowing that their presence is a gift, not an intrusion. Beloved, how many times have you felt something deep in your gut, an uneasiness, a whisper, a warning, and yet you ignored it because you didn't want to seem rude, difficult, or unkind? How many times have you said yes when every fiber of your being was screaming no? As women, we are often taught that being nice is more important than being true to ourselves, that keeping the peace is better than speaking our truth. But beloved, ignoring your intuition for the sake of being nice is not kindness. It is self-betrayal. Your intuition is your internal compass. It is the quiet voice that knows when something is off, even when there's no logical explanation. It's the feeling in your chest when you sense you're being manipulated. It's the unease in your stomach when a situation isn't safe. It's the pull in your heart when something isn't right for you. But too often we silence that voice because we don't want to upset others. We convince ourselves that we're overreacting, that we should give people the benefit of the doubt, that it's just our imagination. But beloved, your intuition is not something to dismiss. It is something to trust. Think about the times when you ignored your intuition. Maybe you stayed in a relationship even though you knew deep down it wasn't right. Maybe you agreed to something you didn't want to do because you didn't want to seem selfish. Maybe you let someone talk you out of what you knew was best for you. And looking back, don't you wish you had listened to yourself? That inner voice was not trying to lead you astray. It was trying to protect you. There is a cost to silencing your intuition. When we repeatedly override our own instincts, we begin to lose trust in ourselves. We start questioning whether we even know what's best for us. We become disconnected from our own wisdom, relying on others to tell us what to do, how to feel, and who to be. But beloved, you don't need someone else to validate what you already know in your soul. Your intuition was given to you for a reason, so you could navigate this world with clarity and confidence. So why do we ignore it? Because we are taught that being agreeable is more important than being discerning. We don't want to be seen as difficult. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. We don't want to be the one who makes things uncomfortable. But beloved, there is nothing noble about betraying yourself to make someone else comfortable. Real kindness does not require you to silence your truth. You can be kind and still have boundaries. You can be compassionate and still say no. You can be loving and still choose what is right for you. Listening to your intuition is an act of self-respect. It is choosing to believe that your feelings, your instincts, and your knowing are valid. It is learning to pause and ask yourself, what do I really feel about this? What is my gut telling me? It is practicing the courage to say, this doesn't feel right to me, and I trust myself enough to honor that. The more you listen to yourself, the louder and clearer your intuition becomes. Beloved, the world does not need more women who silence themselves in the name of politeness. The world needs more women who stand firmly in what they know. Women who trust their gut, who walk away when something isn't right, who say no without guilt, who refuse to let fear of being seen as mean keep them in spaces that do not serve them. Your intuition is not just a feeling. It is wisdom, it is guidance, it is protection. So today I urge you, stop second-guessing yourself. Stop dismissing that inner knowing. Stop trading your peace for approval. You do not owe anyone an explanation for why something doesn't sit right with you. You do not need permission to trust yourself. Stand in the power of your own knowing. Your intuition is speaking. Are you listening? Beloved, how many times have you said yes when your heart was screaming no? How often have you put your own needs, dreams, and well-being on the back burner just to keep someone else happy? There's a silent expectation placed on women that we must be agreeable, accommodating, and selfless to be worthy of love and acceptance. We are taught that being a good woman means being easy to be around, that our value comes from how much we can give, serve, and sacrifice. But beloved, let me tell you something that may shake you. Your worth is not determined by how much of yourself you are willing to give away. Many of us have been conditioned to believe that putting ourselves last is a virtue, that if we just work harder, love more, and carry the burdens of others, we will finally be appreciated. And so we become masters of overextending. We take on too much, say yes when we want to say no, and pour from an empty cup, all while hoping that someone will notice our efforts and give us the validation we so desperately seek. But beloved, sacrificing yourself for approval is not love, it's self-abandonment. The truth is, no amount of approval from others will ever fill the void left by neglecting yourself. You can twist yourself into every possible shape to please people, but the reality is there will always be someone who thinks you're too much or not enough. If you build your worth on external validation, you will spend your life chasing a moving target, one that will never truly satisfy you. The approval of others is fleeting, but the cost of constantly betraying yourself is long-lasting. Think about all the times you gave more than you had, hoping to be appreciated. Did it bring you the peace you were searching for, or did it leave you feeling depleted, unseen, and resentful? The hardest truth to accept is that people who only love you for what you can do for them do not truly love you. Real love, real connection does not require you to sacrifice your own well-being. It does not ask you to disappear so that others can shine. So how do we break free from this cycle? First, we must recognize where we have been giving ourselves away in exchange for approval. Are we staying in relationships that drain us because we're afraid of being alone? Are we saying yes to obligations that steal our joy because we don't want to disappoint others? Are we constantly over-explaining, over-apologizing, and overcompensating just to be liked? If the answer is yes, then beloved, it's time to shift. Next, we must learn to set boundaries, not just with others, but with ourselves. A boundary is not selfish, it is self-respect. It is knowing that you are worthy of rest, of saying no, of prioritizing yourself without guilt. It is reminding yourself that you do not have to be everything for everyone to be enough. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. They are about choosing yourself, protecting your peace, and making sure that love is given, not demanded at the cost of your well-being. And finally, beloved, we must learn to give ourselves the approval we've been seeking from others. The greatest freedom comes when you realize that you do not need permission to be who you are, to take up space, to honor your needs. When you stop seeking validation from people who will never see your worth and start recognizing it in yourself, everything changes. You will walk differently, speak differently, love differently. Because you will know deep in your bones that you were never meant to be small, never meant to live for approval, never meant to sacrifice yourself to be loved. So today, I urge you, choose yourself, not because it's easy, not because others will always understand, but because you are worthy of the same love, care, and devotion that you so freely give to others. You do not have to prove your worth. You do not have to earn your place. You are already enough. Now, live like it. Beloved, how many times have you swallowed your words, held back your truth, or softened your opinions just to avoid judgment? How often have you second-guessed yourself, wondering what others might think if you spoke up? As women, we are often taught, sometimes outright, sometimes through unspoken expectations, that being accepted is safer than being authentic, that blending in is better than standing out, that being agreeable is more valuable than being real. But beloved, when you let the fear of judgment silence your voice, you are not just protecting yourself from criticism, you are robbing the world of the gift that only you can bring. The truth is, no matter what you do, someone will always have an opinion about it. You could be the kindest, most thoughtful person in the room, and still, there will be those who find fault with you. You could speak with wisdom and grace, and still someone will misunderstand you. You could try your hardest to please everyone, and still there will be people who disapprove. So if judgment is inevitable, why let it control you? Why let the fear of what people might say keep you from using your voice, pursuing your dreams, or standing up for what you believe in? Think about the women who have made history, the women who have changed lives, the women who inspire you. Did they stay silent to keep the peace? Did they let the opinions of others dictate their purpose? No, beloved, they spoke anyway. They dared to be seen, to be heard, to be fully themselves. Knowing that judgment would come, but choosing to rise above it. They understood that their voice, their truth, their presence mattered more than the comfort of staying small. And if they could do it, so can you. But I understand, it's not easy. The fear of judgment is real and it can be paralyzing. We worry about being misunderstood. We worry about being criticized. We worry about being rejected. And yet, the cost of staying silent is even greater. When you silence your voice, you silence your power. You miss out on opportunities that were meant for you. You let fear dictate your life instead of courage. And worst of all, you send yourself the message that what you have to say is not valuable. But beloved, that is a lie. Your voice is valuable, your truth is important, and the world does need to hear it. So how do we move past this fear? First, we must recognize that judgment is not a reflection of our worth. It is often a reflection of someone else's limitations. People will always see you through the lens of their own experiences, insecurities, and biases. Their judgment says more about them than it does about you. And second, we must remind ourselves that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to speak even when fear is present. It is saying, I may be afraid, but I will not be silent. It is understanding that your voice was not meant to be buried under the weight of someone else's opinion. So, beloved, I ask you, what would you say if you weren't afraid? What would you do if judgment had no power over you? What dreams would you chase? What truth would you speak? What impact would you make if you stopped waiting for permission? Today, choose to speak, choose to be seen, choose to own your voice. Because when you do, you will find that the freedom of being fully yourself is far greater than the fear of being judged. Beloved, how many times have you looked in the mirror and thought, I am not enough? How many times have you questioned whether you were smart enough, beautiful enough, successful enough, or simply worthy enough? This belief that you are somehow lacking, somehow falling short, is not something you were born with. It is something the world has taught you. It is the weight of unrealistic expectations, past disappointments, and comparison that slowly erodes your confidence. But beloved, let me remind you of a truth that is deeper than any lie you've ever believed. You are already enough. You always have been. Somewhere along the way, we start measuring our worth by external markers. The job title, the relationship status, the number on the scale, the opinions of others. We convince ourselves that if we could just fix one thing, if we could be a little thinner, a little more successful, a little more like her, then we would finally feel worthy. But beloved, that is an endless chase, a race with no finish line. Because the moment you reach one milestone, another will appear, demanding more of you. And if your worth is always tied to something outside of you, you will never feel at peace within yourself. Think of the most powerful, inspiring women in history, the ones who changed lives, broke barriers, and left a legacy. Do you think they never had moments of doubt? Of course they did. But they chose to believe in their worth, even when their circumstances told them otherwise. They chose to show up as they were, knowing that perfection was never the requirement. Presence was. And beloved, the same is true for you. And you don't need to be more of anything to be enough. You just need to believe that who you are right now is already whole and worthy. But I know letting go of the belief that you are not enough is easier said than done. It takes time to unlearn the lies. It takes courage to silence the inner critic that constantly whispers, you should be doing more, you should be better. But beloved, start here. When those thoughts come, challenge them. When you hear, I'm not smart enough, remind yourself of all the things you have learned and accomplished. When you think, I'm not pretty enough, remind yourself that beauty is not defined by a single standard. When you feel, I'm not lovable enough, remember that love is not something you earn. It is something you are inherently worthy of. One of the greatest acts of self-love is to stop waiting for something outside of you to prove your worth. You are not defined by the opinions of others. You are not defined by your mistakes, your past, or the things you have yet to accomplish. You are defined by the love, strength, and wisdom that already live within you. And when you start believing that, when you start walking in that truth, you will stop looking for approval in places that were never meant to give it to you. You will stop dimming your light to make others comfortable. You will stop doubting the power that has been inside you all along. So today I ask you, beloved, what would change if you knew you were enough? How would you walk into a room? How would you speak? How would you pursue your dreams? How would you love yourself? Because the truth is, you don't need to become more. You just need to own the greatness that is already within you. Stop believing the lie that you are not enough. You are enough. You always have been, and nothing, no opinion, no failure, no comparison can ever take that away from you.